If you're an African, you've probably seen tweets like this, or even had a direct experience yourself. It is evident that there's usually a noticeable difference between pictures that are taken in Africa and abroad. Some Nigerians have even called this the Niger filter. So why does this happen? In this video, I will try to explain exactly why and also demonstrate how this is part of a much larger problem. You see, this is not just about photo quality. It's about how technologies are often built without Africans in mind. Let's start with our phone cameras. African sunlight is much more intense than European or American sunlight. And your cameras were designed to handle European light levels. So in Africa, it is unable to handle the light conditions effectively. It is just like trying to pour 5 liters of water into a 1 liter bottle. Apart from even the light, there are potentially systematic biases baked into the cameras directly. For instance, camera makers tend to tune the color profile of their cameras based on Oyinbo skin tones, the color of grass and plants that are common in Europe or America, and the daylight conditions of places with 4 seasons. But like I said earlier, cameras are just one example of how global technologies are usually not designed to fit Africans' unique conditions. And even if an attempt, a genuine one, is made, they tend to fall short in other ways because the people responsible for these technologies are often prioritizing their own interests. Let's take a look at some other examples, from everyday items to crucial systems that affect millions of Africans today. Let's take, for instance, clothing. Today, big clothing brands and manufacturers often make their clothes with synthetic materials like polyester that are designed to trap heat and moisture because of like the Western climate conditions, which is reasonable, right? However, in Africa, with mostly a hot and humid weather, clothes should mainly be made with materials that are breathable. Materials like cotton and linen that, instead of trapping heat, will release heat. Another related example is how modern buildings are built nowadays in Africa. We mostly import Western designs that are meant for sealed environments. Again, it's only reasonable because of the temperate climate over there. In Africa, houses should have mostly open designs with high ceilings and breathable walls so as to take advantage of natural cooling. In the absence of this, we've become heavily reliant on air conditioning, which were originally not designed for tropical conditions and have or might have adverse effects. But now let's take a look at two more serious examples. GMOs have become a very popular topic in Africa today, and rightly so. Should Africans adopt them or not? I believe the experience of Burkina Faso with BT cotton is a cautionary example. Starting in around 2008, Burkinabe farmers started planting BT cotton en masse instead of the traditional cotton that they were using previously. And for a while, it was going really, really well. They were using less pesticides, they were getting better yield, and Burkina Faso became the largest exporter of cotton in Africa in a matter of years. However, over time, it turned out that the cotton lengths were shorter and of lower quality, reducing its market value. So as a result, cotton manufacturers in Burkina Faso were processing less and less cotton for the same price. And this entire experiment collapsed, costing Burkina Faso over $2.1 billion in export revenue. I believe the lesson from this is that Africa must be able to investigate the implications of dicey technologies like this independently and correctly before we adopt them. Thankfully, in this case, I mean the Burkina Faso BT cutting experiment, the consequences were mainly economic in nature. But what if they had been health related or environmental? That could have been a big disaster. Let's talk about another example, pharmaceuticals. Most drugs and medicine we take were only tested on Oyimbos, even though Africa make up over 50% of the world population today. And it is an established fact that genetics, nutrition, and the environment affect how drugs work in the body. So it is not surprising that, for instance, some hypertension medications or pain relievers like opioids don't work as well for Africans or come with different side effects. Even baby formulas are not always made with African babies in mind. Can you imagine? I checked, and it seems that only a few African countries have actually enforced baby food standards that fit local realities. Most just follow international conventions or they make slight modifications here and there. When was the last time you saw an African owned baby formula brand on the market? This is dangerous and can create a vicious cycle. As Dr. Mercy Longao puts it, sorry, doctor, if I'm mispronouncing your name, but this is important. As an adolescent girl, you have to grow and enter your period of reproductive age at optimal nutrition for you to give your child a chance to have optimal nutrition and therefore have a chance to live up to their potential. So, what is the solution exactly? I believe we need to be fully conscious of this issue first and foremost. And that awareness should lead to a constant, deliberate effort to domesticate technologies whenever they clearly don't meet our needs or worse, are detrimental to us. This is something nations like China, India, and Japan do so well. Take the keyboard problem, for example. Most digital keyboards are based on QWERTY, which was designed for the English language primarily. But for languages with different letters, tonal marks, or unique characters, typing becomes a struggle. So what did they do? The Chinese developed the pinyin system. The Indians created the inscript keyboard for their main languages. The Japanese, they use JIS keyboards. What do all these solutions have in common? They adapted the QWERTY keyboard to their own unique needs. But for African languages, a problem this basic still remains largely unsolved. As Eman Esse used to say, Africans can and must build tropical tolerant solutions. Thankfully, many African startups have realized this and are building local solutions, particularly those that are software based. But we can do and must do even more. We should be designing architectures that fit African climates, clothes designed for tropical weathers. We should be building vehicles engineered for African roads. We should be testing and formulating drugs for African genes, African diseases, and African environments. Before I wrap up, I have to mention some African pioneers who have been leading the way in domesticating technologies for Africans on the continent and in the diaspora. Real examples of what more of us should follow. People like Professor Kelly Chibali, Francis Kere, Eman Kojo Esse, Michel Elegbe, and Strive Masiyiwa. So the next time you notice that Niger filter effect in action, remember it is not just about the cameras. It is more general. It's about how technology must be adapted, improved, and built to work for African conditions. Thank you for watching.